am Levi Johnny Griffin, host of Word Today, and this is my lovely wife and beautiful co-host,
Portia Griffin.
Hey, see, say that one more time.
Portia Griffin.
Yeah, it still doesn't get old, man. All right, and she made me, before we went on, she made me put my ring on.
Surely did.
And I was like, it's just for the video. Wow. My pastor said that anytime your wife says something, just go, yes, ma'am. So.
That works.
Wise man.
Wow. So today we have an interesting word today for you. We're going to discuss some really awesome topics that I think you guys are really going to enjoy talking about. Some stuff that I know I enjoy talking about. I'm here hanging with two of my really, really good buddies, and we went out to eat barbecue one day, and just this topic popped up, and we were talking for like over an hour, and very passionate discussion. And I thought it was really, really awesome. So I was like, man, will you guys come back Tuesday and do the same thing on the show? And we're going to see what transpires. So first up the bat, you're going to see Pastor Emerson Allen. He's on one of the previous shows. So thanks for coming back.
Good to hear. Good to be here.
And a really good buddy of mine, Eric Davidson.
Hello.
And so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to talk about themselves, since you're just closest to the microphone. And they probably already know about you. But if you want to give them a recap.
Pastor Emerson Allen with Tri Ministry Worship Center at 6761 Hampton Inn. Pastor.
All right. And you want to catch his full video on Word Today, Word from Our Leaders, make sure you check out Pastor Emerson Allen. And now my good buddy, who's an airplane pilot, born on the east side, has an amazing, phenomenal backstory, kind of pulling himself up by the bootstraps. And I just love his story. I loved hearing it when we were out for barbecue. But tell us, you can talk about you better than I can talk about you. Just let me hear a little bit about, who you are. Pastor Allen is old news. He's been here. So everybody knows who he is. He's yesterday's salami.
I'll take that.
Of course, no. We love you. But just tell us a little bit about your background, how you grew up, your family. Let the world know. Let the audience, Word Today audience know. Just kind of a little bit about you.
Well, where's the barbecue?
Well, we got some Cheerios.
Cheerios.
We got tons of milk. We were supposed to be starting the Daniel fast.
The Daniel fast. That's a good one.
But we bought all of this milk and all of this food, so now we're not on the Daniel fast.
Okay.
Eat all of it.
Oh, I jest. The barbecue brings people together, and of course, we had great conversations over the food the other day. But my name is Eric Davidson. Grew up in Southern California, out in the high desert, and two working parents. Actually, my mom didn't work; she was a homemaker until we were old enough to kind of, that she can start working. She was a teacher. My father was a civil engineer, estimator for a contractor and a building firm. And, typical growing up in sunny California.
Mm-hmm.
And got to 18 and started working construction actually in high school and working through high school. Some of my first jobs were working at the snack bar during summer camp at the church, and having picking up stuff around the construction sites when I was a kid, and plumbing warehouse. I worked in a plumbing warehouse when I got my driver license. I can actually drive to and from work, and had a job throughout every summer that I was able to work, and went off to construction in the islands of Hawaii for a couple of years, made some money, saved up my money with some help from my parents, did flying lessons, and then went back to Hawaii and worked construction a little bit more, built up some more finances, and ended up in Dallas back in '94. Started flying there, did the whole professional pilot program, and started teaching there. Taught for about 3 years. Got on, flew freight for a couple of years on the backside of the clock from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. That was an experience. No autopilot. No, flying on the backside of the clock, sleeping all day, flying out of Louisiana up to Cincinnati and back, and East Coast. So there you have it. Then started doing jets in 2000, got into corporate jet flying and the private pilot world. And so went from there and was also into finances since 2000, been studying financial stuff, the economics. And I have a degree in aviation management and also a finance certificate, just getting my toes wet. I figured with all the studying I'd done with finance and all the books I've read, I might as well get some credit for it.
There you go. So great diverse background. I know you spent some time on the east side too, right? Didn't you guys live on the east side a little bit? No?
East side.
San Antonio?
I moved to San Antonio 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I've only been here 6 years. When I was telling you the story the other day, I think you were referring to that. I grew up on the east side of my hometown.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And then we moved to the quote west side, which was only 3 miles away. It's a small, 60,000 person, out there. But where I grew up, we were inundated with aviation. That's where they built all the B-1 bomber, the B-2 bomber, the SR-71, the U-2. We saw the first space shuttle landings out there at Edwards Air Force Base. So we saw quite a bit of aviation flying around growing up, playing soccer and in my early years. And you'd see stuff flying overhead and thought, that looks like a cool thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So it explains wanting to grow up and get into flying.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yes.
And a buddy of mine who I work with, he started his pilot license. I don't know if he ever finished. And I know Al, a mutual buddy of ours, is doing the same thing. And I've thought about it for, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years. From start to finish, how long is that process?
Well, it depends on your timeline. It depends if you're working full time, your age, and obviously your commitment. There's a financial commitment, of course. You, like anything, it's schooling, it's education, and there's the practical side of you got to rent an airplane, you got to pay the flight instructor. So you're going to have to find a good instructor through maybe a flight school or private avenue. We have a lot around here. I haven't personally visited them because I've kind of been out of the flight instructing side of things. I still hold a flight instructor certificate, but I do not actively teach. But I could teach if I wanted to. But the professional pilot side of things keeps me really busy. So
slip you at 20 and we'll work this out on camera.
You don't have to slip. I'll charge you for my teaching. But yeah, it's important. Get a good instructor, some good study materials. There's DVDs, there's online. Everything's online nowadays, I guess. And like I said, I haven't been in that world in quite a while, but it is, it's got so many different facets to it that you can just, you can do it at your own pace. You can do it at home. You can do home study. But then, of course, you've got to get in an aircraft with an instructor to teach you how to fly the airplane. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm playing the video game, so no.
It works. So we're here to discuss, and I know you guys are waiting on this. Well, it's probably going to be under the title, so you already know what we're kind of talking about. But the discussion got into, and us being, I always wanted to push the needle forward in the community and ministry. We thought this would be such a great topic to talk about with you guys. But it started off with a simple conversation of minimum wage. And I kind of told the story about I came out of a church in Baton Rouge, or we came out of a church in Baton Rouge 2 months ago. Well, it was the 19th. It was after with the funeral.
Oh.
So that was 2 weeks later. So that was like the 28th, something like that. And they had a little stand and 2 girls were there, and they were talking about minimum wage, and they were talking about wanting to raise minimum wage from I think it's like $8 or $9 where it is now to like $15. So that sparks the debate. Is a way to kind of help. They wouldn't be middle class. I guess or would it be lower middle class or lower class? If you're making $8 an hour, well, how to help that economic class progress, right? Because everyone wants to see them progress, but is it better progression by just saying, hey, you don't have a new skill set, but we're just going to give you more money. Anyway, we're going to almost double your salary from 8 to 15, almost double. Or would it be better to say, hey, these are just entry-level jobs. This is better to keep it low so people can hire tons of these kids or tons of these people, and put that money into education where they learn a skill set like aviation or something else that pays a little more money. So, Eric, we'll start with you because you're new to the show. So I want to give you the ability to start first.
What's the question?
Well, the question is, would it be better to raise minimum wage to $15, or would it be better to move that to a different, use that money in a different way, or put the efforts to change that class of people, the people that make minimum wage?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons, and if you're wondering why we would have this topic on the show, I'll take you back to where the disciples are, people are coming to the disciples to, the widows to eat, and they say, hey, we can't serve soup kitchens, but they appointed someone to take care of widows, to take care of the hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus himself said, hey, when you fed me, when you fed them, you fed me. When you housed them, you housed me. When you visited them when they were sick, or took care of them, you took care of me. So we can't be, I always heard a pastor say, we can't be so heavenly minded, we're no earthly good. So the issues of the world are Christian issues, in the fact that Jesus himself challenges us to find ways to resolve these problems and to help the needy and to help the less fortunate. So I think this is kind of putting a finger on the pulse of some of today's topics and how we can dive right in to begin to make a difference in society right now. So just to kind of premise that.
That's a great question. That's an excellent question. I think, obviously, like you said, that's a hot topic right now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of politicians that are promoting a higher minimum wage. There's people that believe that if we set a number for the minimum wage, that's going to improve the lives of millions of people maybe in this country, mm-hmm. and lift them out of poverty, so to speak. Mm-hmm. From someone who's been needed help and had people in a support structure around them, family, friends, and coming from a background where I've been living check to check and at the lower income levels, I could say that I wouldn't have made it without assistance and help from others. Yeah. And that was done in the private sector. That being said, in the same thread, I've never had a job that I felt like there had to be a minimum that someone had to pay me either.
Yeah.
And I think that the marketplace, it kind of determines what that level is based on the economy. Mm-hmm. To think about a minimum wage, you have to think about what drives the economy. Yeah. And just pouring more money into forcing employers to pay more increases the labor cost, of course. And how do those the increase in labor costs affect the businesses? And 75% of businesses in the United States are small businesses, and their profit margins aren't that great. So there's some unintended consequences that happen to 75% of the businesses in the country. I think a lot of time when this hot topic comes up and this debate comes up is that these are big businesses that we all know. Mm-hmm. The huge businesses, the megala businesses that have thousands, hundreds of people. But those businesses actually represent a smaller part of what's happening in the economy in the U.S., I think. I think there's 75% of small businesses that you force them to pay an arbitrary number, whether it's $15 an hour or $20 an hour. Why don't we just make it $35, $40, $50 an hour? It makes you ask the questions. For one, okay, who gets to determine what that number is? And when that number changes and it drives up the labor costs for these businesses, what is the reaction, or how do these businesses respond to that number? So if they respond in lowering the hours that an employee can work, that obviously cuts the hours, even though the pay goes up, and the employee is left at the end of the week with the same pay that week. And so there's a response, for every action, there's a reaction. And so there's a lot of unintended consequences with it. My biggest issue is like, who determines what that arbitrary number is? Because we force the labor cost up, but then that drives up the cost of production, which drives up the cost to the consumer. And now to pay for that, the same people at that level are now saying, well, now it costs too much to live. Now I need more. So I don't think that's moving that number moves the needle in someone's life that improves their lives or not. I think the bigger question is what it really takes to get you out of that situation, and what is your purpose as a person. My purpose was to learn how to fly and become a professional pilot, and it wasn't an easy road, but nothing worth doing ever is.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I jump?
So, and we'll definitely give everybody a chance to respond here. So you mentioned some stats. Of course, with the audience, anytime you have an audience, especially the size of ours, people will fact check you, which is a good thing. It keeps us honest. And so you're saying the majority of businesses are small business, and I've heard that before. This is true. And when you look at I just want to make sure I'm understanding, make sure we're all understanding. If you're the small business, the local grocer with 3 guys working for you, and you're making, at the end of the day, the same amount your guys are making, because that's the only profit that's left in the business, you're saying raising from 8 to 15, which really doubles, goes from really 15 to 30 after you add in their Medicare and all this other stuff that you have to pay, would hurt the business so much that would hurt the owner, and that either the business would close or they'd have to let go. What would be the negative consequences of this to the business?
Well, there could be different consequences, of course. As a business owner, you would have to look at your numbers. You'd have to look at your financials. So just like in your personal finances, you look at your income, your revenues, and your outlays, and you say, well, I've got to pay this much in taxes, 25% approximately, and depends on your revenues. So you've got to withhold that. Then you've got to cover your operating expenses, and you've got to cover your owner's pay, as an owner of the business. As an example, I was in Seattle, and there was Seattle's push to the $15 minimum wage. And so I asked the waitress, I said, how has this affected you? And she said that in the food service industry, they did not want this raised. They did not want to be a part of the $15. They wanted to be exempt from it. And so what happened was, I asked her, well, why is that? I don't know what it is for the food industry workers, but it's less than minimum wage is what they can pay them, because they are paid tips.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's
$2 an hour.
Is it $2
an hour?
$2.30 an hour? Yeah.
You survive off the tips.
Yeah. And they were generally bringing home, she said, way more than $15 an hour, way more than the minimum wage. And so everybody was satisfied. At the beginning of the day, everyone has a choice. Nobody is, and that's what I think it comes down to, is the choice versus being forced to do something as a business owner, So what she had said was they wanted to be exempt from this because what happened was the labor cost went up from, like you said, I think around $2 an hour to now they did it in steps. So it went to 10, and then it went to 12, then it went to 15 over like a 3-month period, a 6-month period, or a 9-month period. So what happened was they were progressively moving into the 15. So it wasn't a shock to everybody. Well, it was a little bit of a shock to the business owner, because they said, she was speaking for him, saying, well, this business can't afford to pay every waiter $10 an hour plus tips. So what they'd done, how they managed to do it, is there was a automatic 8.5% service fee on your bill. So every check that you had. So if you had dinner, you and your wife had dinner and it came out to X amount, I use an even number just for simplicity. It's just, let's say your dinner cost $40. They automatically added that. Gratuity. So what happened is people thinking it was a gratuity. It wasn't. It was just a fee, and saying, well, wait a minute, you're making great money now. The tips just took a nosedive. And since the tips took a nosedive, at the end of the day, all these food service industry workers were actually making less than they were before the law went in effect. Mm-hmm. And so she was really miffed about it, understandably. And I think the thing is that, when government involvement starts to manipulate the markets through saying, well, you need to do this, I think it has good intentions, but not all good intentions. It's a great intention, but what is the actual result of what's happening? And so that was the example I saw. And so a lot of people are fighting. They looked at the initial, this is going to happen, but they're not looking long term.
I'm Pastor Allen.
Yes.
Same question.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
You look like you're itching. You're like, come on, let's go.
To begin with, let's go back to where you initially made the statement and were speaking of like the fast food industry, and that this should be an entry level into something else.
Can I get you to speak up just a little bit?
Okay. This would be an entry level into something else.
Yeah.
So now there's so many components here. When you say 75% of the business are small businesses, but if you look at the ratio of a small business might have 2 or 3 people, whereas you got a Walmart, other large industry that employ vastly more people, a lot more people. You might have 75% of all these little small businesses, but you'll have one huge business that out employs all of these other people. So that's kind of a deceptive figure when you look at how many people are actually affected. Now, some people, everybody can't be a brain surgeon. Everybody can't be an airplane pilot. Everybody can't be a pastor. Everybody can't. There's different intellects. And what we're saying to the people is, because you do not have the same intellect that I have, you don't deserve to be able to basically just live. Now, the other side to that coin, when you only make $8 an hour, you fall into the poverty level. So what do? You got to have your income subsidized by food stamps, government assistance. So so they got to come to the government, and we're paying it automatically instead of up front saying, okay, now this is a wage so that someone can make a decent living. And statistics show in areas where there's poverty, there's going to be high crime. In areas where there's poverty, there's going to be drugs. In areas where all these things happen, and they're all related together. So the whole goal is to, number one, give people enough money where they can have their dignity and work. Unfortunately, I halfway agree with you. Like McDonald's and some of the other places, that fast food industry ought to be something that kids can work, but there are adults that work there and work hard, and they make very little. So again, what do? You go to the government for food stamps. We have these funds that are paying, so somebody's paying it. In essence, we are when that happens. So what is a fair wage? I mean, like I told y'all earlier, my first job, I'm old, y'all. My first job was $1 an hour.
He's really 18.
I'm really 18, but 30 hours a week. I remember looking at 30 hours, and I had $30. But the $30 went a long way because the cost of different things were lower. And when I became a young adult, at 22, bought my first 3-bedroom brick home. It cost me $16,400.
Wow.
And that was, and I was like, how much my house note? $135. Yeah, I don't know about that. Turned around, of course, with inflation, that same house would probably cost you about $125,000, $150,000 now. So inflation and the cost of living has gone up, and everybody's seen the charts where the cost of living going up and wages have been stagnant. So where's all this money in between? When you look at facts, where the money is in the 10 to 20% of Americans control 10% controls 80%, something outrageous where the funds are. So now I'm a billionaire. What am I going to do with my money? This is my theory. I'm going to take my billions and put it where? Last week you said in the bank, and then the bank lends money to people, right?
Well, it depends on who the individual is.
Okay.
I don't know where they're putting the money.
$80 billion.
But the statistic that you just mentioned about the wages not increasing, I don't think that's true. Living wages have increased in the last 10 years.
It hasn't increased in proportion to the cost of living, is what I'm saying.
According to what?
According to facts.
What statistics?
Well, it's facts. You can.
Which ones?
All of the facts. I mean, again, I just told you, a 3-bedroom brick home cost $16,400 in 1973, and now that same house is much, much higher. The wages have not, and this is a fact, that the wages have not kept up with the cost of living. This is why, and you're right, when you say, well, we're going to give you a cost of living raise. And then rather than the people that pay for that cost of living raise, they just put it in the product. That's why every year they got to get cost of living wage, constantly. And it's just pinching away at our economy. We don't hear enough people talk about inflation anymore. And it's rampant. And it is rampant. So again, if you take that same billions of dollars that's sitting in whoever's bank and disperse it into the people, what's going to happen with the people? The people are consumers. Because they have more money, they're going to go back to the businesses and put that money back in. They're going to pay taxes, which puts the money back into it. And so then now you got to hire somebody because, wow, my business is going great. And so that's when you're taking down unemployment, because I got to hire a person. And now that I'm hiring people, because there's more business. Why? Because there's more money circulating within the system. Now the key, well, why would they not want to do that? Well, if you got less money, then that money's more valuable. That makes my millions worth more. But at the same time, I used to would go bend over to pick up a penny. At my age now, I see a penny, I'm going, it's not worth the effort I have to go through to pick it up. And the reason I know I'm right is because the government even talked about eliminating pennies altogether, remember? They talked about eliminating actual pennies because it's not worth it.
So what about the businesses that have closed because of the higher labor cost?
What businesses are they?
There was a business I heard about. It was a business that closed, and they wrote a letter that said the labor cost drove us out of business, so they shut the doors.
I don't know who that is, and there's always an isolated incident, an isolated situation. You could say that, but in my personal opinion, you have to, in order to fairly evaluate something, you have to look at the overall cost. Now, listen, I wasn't a pastor my whole life. I was store director for a company. I won't say the company name. I was store director for several years and had a multi-million-dollar operation. And I understood my costs, and I had to control my costs. And if we did a better job in production and control my costs, everybody could earn a decent living in the store by improving each one of them's production. Mm-hmm. But I had my finger on actual costs. What's going on? What is the profit? So again, what I think is happening in our country, and this is a disease, it's called greed. Greed. And in the Bible, it even talks about it. And then in our society, we know excess of alcohol, you got a problem. You drink too much. Eating too much, you got a problem. It's too much. Anything that's in excess, and there are people that are addicted to money. I got to have more. And they lose their way. I mean, how many billions do you really need?
So you're saying it's the billionaires that don't want to raise.
But no one's arguing those facts. I mean, Mark Dreyer, Bernie Madoff, all those people that were greedy. We're not arguing that, but what are the unintended consequences of raising the minimum wage? What do you think those unintended the negativities?
So I'm gonna put a pause right there, and when we come back, I have some questions for both of our guests. All right, guys, we are back here in the middle of what I think is, I love intellectual exchanges. I think it grows both sides, because I think both sides kind of hear the points for the other side to grow. I wanted two questions. I know Eric was asking a question, and you kind of asked him a question, which invited him into the to your oration. But you said two things that really stood out to me. You said the first thing was not everybody has the same intellect.
Correct.
So those with a higher intellect make more money, and thus those with a lower intellect can't feed themselves because they don't have the correct wage.
There's a skill set. Everybody has a different skill set, and we put a different value on different skill set. Back in the 70s or whatever, that was challenged. And I want to say I'll be wrong, I guarantee. But a large city where they didn't want to pay the garbage men their money. And they said, okay, we won't pick up the garbage. Yeah. And the garbage started piling up, and they realized, well, their value is maybe we need to pay these guys. And so now they're engineers, and now they have a fair wage. Those same guys were picking up a trash can, throwing their backs out and what have you. So innovation of the new trash can that picks up and helps them in that way. So now they were able to see the value of those individuals.
But in a fire truck, it used to be two guys in the back and one guy in the front. They fired the two guys in the back. The arm does it. Now they just have one guy driving the truck that also controls the arm. So that's kind of technology and movement. But I wanted to hit home on the point, or just clarify the point of the intellect. Yeah. And once again, these are your words, not mine.
My words.
So you're saying those of lower intellect are making a lower wage. So my question to that statement is, would it not be better to raise the intellect of those people so they make a higher wage versus just giving them more money?
That's
because
so
if
funny.
you give a lot of money to someone with low intellect, they're going to do low intellect things.
No, that's
going off of what you're saying. They probably just spend the money, not save it, right?
Okay, now there's a paradigm there. I understand that. And again, anything that Eric says, I say, that we say, it's not an absolute. You can't say all people this and all this. What we're talking about is generally what can transpire. Now, here's what we got. All of us were in school, right? First grade, second grade. But what kind of grades did you make in fifth grade?
Fifth grade? I think I did pretty well. Elementary and middle, I was on target. Okay. I didn't go crazy to high school. So I was probably on a roll, elementary and middle.
So what you're saying is there were people
I went awry.
I know I did too.
I got back to college, I did better. I was dingless. But no, high school, we're going to blot out those.
We're going to black that out.
That never happened.
So what I'm saying is,
don't release my transcript.
So what I'm saying that each one of us and everybody out there looking, they fell somewhere in that classification. A's and B's student, B and C student, D students that didn't make as good a grades. Right? We had some kids that wasn't quite as intellectually nimble, I'm gonna use that word, as maybe we were. Correct? So you knew, some of those guys I knew, man, by the time they get out, they won't be a brain surgeon. Okay, so what can they do in our society to be productive? They won't be able to fly airplanes because they don't have the intellect.
Oh no, they fly airplanes.
I hope not. To do that. By the same token, I guarantee you, when we pull up to McDonald's, wherever we pull up to, we want somebody to be there to do these jobs. Yeah. They're jobs that we don't want to do as intellectual people. I don't want to do that. I worked with my dad, not my first job, but after I graduated from high school, I worked with my dad at Todd Shipyard for 3 months. And I was an apprentice pipe fitter. I knew I was going to college. Because there's no way I could have done what my dad did for 35
You don't want to do
years.
that job.
I couldn't do that. That just wasn't my ability to do, but somebody has to do that.
Yeah.
So what's happening in our country at this point, we put a higher premium on intellectuals than we do on people that have different skill sets.
I disagree.
So I want to, and Eric, we're going to toss back to you, but before we do, just so you can respond, I know we're Pastor Allen has had a good bit of time to orate, but I want to ask you. There's two things I want to ask you. Then we'll toss back to Eric. One thing you were talking about and actually I guess I'll let Eric respond for this for himself about the smaller businesses employing less people, but the larger businesses employing more people. That way, thus, they employ the majority of America. And I guess I'll let you toss in kind of defend that point there. But when you talk about intellect and the guy that's not going to be a brain surgeon that you went to school with, when you say that it's nature versus nurture, or how much is nature versus nurture?
Ooh,
maybe you have parents
that's
that
a
really
good question.
worked with you. So you have two babies, they're both born healthy babies, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Mm-hmm. Maybe you had an 11th finger, who knows?
Right.
But and they grow up in they go to the same middle school, high school, elementary school, but one has a mother. Maybe they come both from single home, but one mother pushes education and one doesn't. They both would have the same potential. It's kind of like kinetic energy. They both have that kinetic or that potential energy, but only one is being accessed or utilized. The other one doesn't have that person pushing them to be smarter. So
that's
would it
why
not
I say I agree. Yes, it's
advantageous
a balance
to push them to be smart. You get where I'm going with this?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Again,
or you just think, hey, they're dummies, they're not going to learn.
One of my closest best friend, if he were alive today, he would tell you all of our names should have been on his graduation because he wouldn't have graduated without us. Mm-hmm. But he went on to be very successful and financially because of the drive that he had in him to do well. And he was in our little group that, even though he didn't make the same grades, but he used his personality and hard work to advance himself.
Yeah.
There
and I want to get back to you, but I feel like we're leaving Eric out of the conversation.
But there is again, there's never an absolute. Never. There might be someone that has the potential, never was pushed. There might be somebody that was pushed and didn't have the potential.
Yep.
Didn't have. So every situation is different. But if we look at, there was an experiment done where they took some fleas and put them in a jar, and the fleas jumped out of the jar. Put the fleas back in, they jumped out of the jar. Put the fleas back in, put a lid on it, and they would only jump as high. That's all they could get. They took the lid off, and they would only jump that high because they had been conditioned. They've been conditioned to jump that high. In the circus, the baby elephant has a big stake driven in the ground to hold him because he's pulling. The older elephant just has a little stake on there because he's been conditioned that I can't pull it when he could if he tried. And some of the elephants, they actually said that they just put the rope around us, didn't even attach it. And they go, the rope said, I can't move. And so that conditioning that is going on in society, and I say that with no doubt and without shame, that history has not, in our country, has not given the credit to all the different people and highlighted them so that you know that you can do it because you've seen someone else like you do it. Back in the 80s, we did an experiment. Now, I can play a little basketball, but I ain't the greatest. But I would go to the park, put my wristband on, have my ball, and and the guys would go, yeah, we want him. Mm. Why? Because I was the black guy. They picked me because I looked like I could play. And then I could see in the eyes, he's afraid, he doesn't know what to do. He could be a better player than me, and he's been conditioned. Oh, he's better. Ask the question, why do so many kids say they want to be Michael Jordan, LeBron James, football players, singers, Beyonce? Why do they do that? Not because their parents are that, but they see that success in that area. So they say, well, if she can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it. So I can be whatever I see. If I see myself there, that's why it was so important when Obama became president. I believe that triggered a whole lot of minds all over the world. Not only black kids, but Anglo kids as well, to accept the ability of another kid that, oh, well, he can be president. I can support him. And I said, well, be great. Maybe you can be vice president, but you can't be the president.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me toss Eric, and I'll say this, that when I go to McDonald's, we talk about McDonald's,
Mm-hmm.
and minimum wage, I see white kids, black kids,
Right.
boys, girls, and minimum wage is...
Poverty knows no color.
No, yeah, so it's kind of generic there. But Eric?
Well, it's interesting. That's a great question about the intellect and the nature versus nurture. That's been a big debate for, decades. You have two individuals raised by the same parents with similar backgrounds, similar upbringings, similar finances, similar education, and yet they take two completely different paths, and one becomes very successful. One becomes successful in their own way. So my question on the intellect, you mentioned people like Michael Jordan, Beyonce, and very successful people. Would you say that they're very intellectual?
Would I say they're very intellectual? Yes, I would.
Okay.
Michael is a genius when it comes to basketball. He's blessed with some certain abilities. Beyonce...
Was he educated in the public schools with that, though? I mean, we were talking about education, how that is perpetuates, and maybe that's the springboard for success. But there are so many examples of people that were not intellectuals that are very successful individuals. I have a good buddy of mine who is, it depends on what you define success as, first of all.
It depends on what you define intellect and intelligence. What are you talking about? A high IQ?
Well, I thought we were talking because the education system. We were talking about educating C's and D students, because I know several, and me being one of them in some subjects. But so I have a friend who did not do too well. Was one of the guys that you were talking about in school, but has been very successful in business. And so,
but for every one of him, I can name you 4 or 5 guys that never left the hometown that still...
Well, he never left the hometown either.
Well, what I'm saying, they're still in the same community, the same environment.
Yeah, but everybody was given a choice. Nobody forced anybody, the minimum wage, the Walmarts, the big businesses like this, everyone that works there, if you went back and asked them, are you still working after 10 years? And then what were the conditions? There would have to be a big study done on that. But the point, I guess, with the intellectuals and the education is that you find people that are successful that are running multi-million businesses that were D and F students. Because and so the markets pay for how you produce. Michael Jordan produced for the Bulls, and he became very wealthy because of that. First NBA player to ever become a billionaire was Michael Jordan a few years ago.
College.
And he went to college. Yes. Smart individual. But I don't think you correlate the education and being a straight A student or in the high top of your class as being successful. Now you are successful in different avenues.
I agree with you. And I remember one of the guys that, I have to be careful about what I say.
We won't use names. We won't use names.
Some of the guys that
Fred from 3rd Street. He wasn't too sprite, but
was
no.
Was an A student, but he had no common sense. He wasn't able to relate. So, like I say, nothing is absolute.
Yeah.
And, we can pick isolated people to say this, that, and the other. But when I look statistically, I think you were saying that the average income, one of you guys,
Well, you're
70,000.
yeah, your statistically rate of being successful and moving on is that the higher education you receive. Yes.
Well, at in this day and age, that has to be a priority. We kept saying, well, what can we do? Education is the key. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. Education has to be the key. But you have to have education, motivation, and opportunity.
And you have to be driven, like you said.
You have to have opportunity, and you have to be right. So all those things we get from a lot of different areas. Some from parents, but hey a minute, 50% there's 50% divorce rate. So you got a lot of single parent home. 82% of the people in prison came from a father's home. There's a correlation there.
There's a big correlation.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything starts in your home. It starts with your values, things that are put in you as a child.
Definitely.
And some are able to rise and come out, and everybody doesn't react to their situation the same way. Mm-hmm. Some people are down, so they say, well, this is all I can do. And so rather than trying to get up, they just get comfortable with being down.
So what is the solution for those people? Would it be...
I agree. You said something last week that I totally agree with. You said, Pastor, I can help those who want to be helped.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is create an opportunity to instill and into as many individuals that we can to say, yes, you can. You can do this, and instill it. And you're still going to have some that are not going to rise to the top. And I'm not talking, this is not a black and a white thing. I want you to understand this. This is a society thing. Because you got poor white kids, poor Hispanic kids, poor black kids. You got rich white kids, rich black kids, rich. So they all, it's all a correlation, but you have to look at the trend.
Yeah.
And right now,
well, I think there's
the zip code, to do a zip code analysis and start looking at different incomes. The income,
well, there's different demographics.
It's going to be 25,000. Is like
I think there's a big difference between being poor and being broke.
All right, explain that.
Talk about well, going back to Pastor Allen's analogy about the psychology. So you've got the elephant, and I've heard the story. Mm-hmm, you know, the elephant is a baby. They tie him up, right. Big spike. He can't leave. He tugs on it. In his mind, that elephant says, when I'm tied up, I can't escape. And he grows up with that, and he grows up with that paradigm. Mm-hmm. And so then they can just put a rope on there and just a little spike, and someone says, that elephant could pull that spike out and be on its way, and no problem, but he won't, because he's stuck up here. Right. You know? So I think we could all say that everyone in this room has probably been broke.
Really?
But should I raise both hands now?
But have
you ever been broke?
Yeah.
But have you been poor?
Yes.
Psychologically, where you said, woe is me. I think it's more of a mentality, instead of saying I'm broke, but I'm not poor. You know, I'm not poor in spirit. I'm not poor in education.
It was 12. Well, I'll tell you this. It was 12 of us. My mother had to take care of the kids. My dad worked as a laborer, had a third grade education. My first room that I got a chance to sleep in by myself was a closet. I went back to that, and I put my hand on the wall, and it was like this. I went, my God, this is a closet with a window in it. Mm-hmm. We didn't have, we knew about government cheese. Some of y'all know about government cheese. We knew about the powdered eggs. We knew about powdered milk. And that was things that but the different thing, and that's why I wanted you to go back, and some of you have read and studied about Black Wall Street. In 1927, what the situation where there was 50 blocks in, I think it's Tulsa, Oklahoma. Progressive black people, they had it going on. Their own banks, their own school education. And I'm not going to go into the story. Y'all go check it out. It's called Black Wall Street. Some of you already know about it.
That's
and
one
a certain individual in Oklahoma went in and destroyed it in one day. I mean, burned to the ground 35 blocks. Caused these people to have to go into a whole different situation, lost their land, go and study about the land, and they had been moved around, and there were like Indians and blacks that were there. So you couldn't buy that unless you had Indians. So some people went and for $5 got the thing changed to say they're part Indian so they could buy up that land. And it wasn't black people, and it wasn't Indians. And so
That was a tragedy back
in
then.
1927, if that my grandfather was half black and half Choctaw Indian. My grandfather came from that era, and he was an entertainer. If he had been able to stay there, my dad would have been able to stay there. Then my dad would have had, instead of a third grade education, maybe high school or who knows, college. That would have given me and pushed what I had and what I could do just a little higher. But my dad was still an intellectual man because he bought his home. He bought another home and rented it. We moved us out of the city and we physically built our own homes.
So to keep us on track, and I just had this. So you believe, and for all of the guys that are familiar with Black Wall Street, please leave your comments on what Pastor Allen just said. I want to hear your thoughts, and I'm unfamiliar, so I'll do some research myself.
Because had that not happened at that time,
but
think
the
about
question
it.
is,
1929 was the fall, the Depression. That would have been old money that would have been able, and so now you would look at a Midwest segment of individuals with old money, right? That could have progressed and spread, and the economical plight in many African Americans in this country would have been different.
So on the topic of, because we're kind of on the topic of minimum wage, do you believe, from your statement just then, do you believe minimum wage would be kind of like a reparations?
Well, let's put it in a different perspective, and I'm gonna use a different word instead of minimum wage. Fair wage, a fair wage. I mean, if we all went into business together, and say you came up with a certain amount of cash that your parents had gave you, and so we start this business, and I'm doing this, and he's doing it. We all working just as hard. But when it came time to divvy up the money, you say, okay, one for you, two for me, two for you, two for me, you. 1, 2, 3, 4 for me. And wait a minute, let's divvy this up.
And you're saying it's the business owner that's doing that.
That's the powers that be that determine the wages that they're going to pay.
So let me ask you this: have you ever owned a business?
Yes.
How many employees did you have?
I had about.
As the owner, not the manager.
No, I said yes.
Okay, so what? Because you mentioned earlier, what
I had my own business, a video production company, for 3 years.
And how many people did you have employed?
I had
that you were paying.
I had like 3 cameramen. I had a call center and a couple of editors.
And any of these working full-time employees? 40 hours a week? How many were 40-hour-a-week guys? Or any of them?
No,
none of them.
None other than myself, my partner, and my secretary.
Okay, so your secretary was a full-time employee. How much did you pay your secretary?
I don't remember.
Okay. So, and then after 3 years...
And to be honest with you, when I say I don't remember, ask how much I paid myself.
Well, we're talking about the fat cat owners paying the employees, right?
Well, exactly. Well, that was the opposite in that particular situation. I always made sure my employee got paid before I would pay myself.
And at the end of 3 years, you closed down.
And at I had a person to come in and sign a contract to put $250,000 into my company, and backed out and took all the equipment. And I'm not going to say the name because a lot of people would know who it is. And so it caused the company to go out. We couldn't survive.
Mm-hmm.
Without that investment. Without the investment out the equipment. He was one of the ones that outbid everybody, but then didn't stand up to his contract. Went to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, well, yeah, you got a legitimate thing here, but he'll outlast you in court because he's got more money and you have none.
So did you buy all of the equipment?
Did we buy all the equipment? Yeah. Well, it was complicated. We bought some of the equipment. Yes. Was it out of my pocket? Yes. But in the end, when the equipment that we need to do a certain job, he, having put the money in, refused to buy the equipment. He chose to rent it for the same price that we could have bought the equipment, which didn't make sense. And then he bought computers and blah. I said, well, this is not what we need right now. So I wasn't able to control what was going on. And again, he signed a contract for $250,000 and just backed out.
Okay. So, and the reason I say that is you were doing your analogy of, owner being at the table, you get one, you get one, I get four. But I think you're kind of the prime example. When you're the one investing all the money, you're the one paying everybody, you're the one taking the biggest risk. Isn't that biggest risk, biggest reward? If that's not the case, what would motivate businesses to take a risk at all?
Let me tell you something. The law is stacked against it because remember, number one, you can take your company and you set it up to where you can't touch it in a personal LLC. Second thing is bankruptcy. File bankruptcy. Donald Trump, I don't mind saying his name. Donald Trump filed bankruptcy so many times, yada, 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 yada. He got to the point where banks didn't want to, would only loan him money simply because he had a name. It wasn't because of his savvy and what have you. So smarter people were able to parlay that name into something else.
So Eric, I'll ask you this. On the we're talking about nature versus nurture. Do you believe that, and just using Pastor Allen's word, those of higher intellect are becoming billionaires, those of lower intellect are living below the poverty line? And if you do, what would be the solution to bridge that gap? And I don't know if I've missed it, and I don't have a high enough intellect to make billions.
That's a good question. I come from a place of there's only trade-offs in life. So you have to sacrifice things to get to you have to sacrifice to win. But what you win, I don't like to deal with comparisons, because what that does is, I played basketball growing up, and if I could shoot baskets as good as Steph Curry, why don't I have $1 million?
Yeah, why don't you?
Yeah, because I can't shoot baskets. Because I can't shoot baskets as well as him. I don't play basketball as well as Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan. And so that skill set, back to the skill sets we were talking about earlier, is, when you measure success, you have to measure your success based on your own journey in life. You have to base it on who you were yesterday. And are you growing? Are you improving as a person? And so, we have this tendency when something happens in society, I think that a lot of people just say there's this knee-jerk reaction, and it's a reaction. It's not a response. The difference between reacting to something and responding to something is,
exactly.
You got first responders who are trained EMTs, firefighters, police, because they're trained to respond in a logical, methodical manner. Aircraft pilots as well were trained to handle emergencies by responding to them, not reacting to them, going, wait a minute, what do we do? But I think there's this natural tendency of human beings to just react to things and say, okay, I've got to do something about this. And I'm going to come up with a solution. And I think another thing psychologically for some people, I know there's a principle behind this. I don't know the name of it, but because I came up with it, not me, Eric, but because I came up with it, then it's going to work.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to some hubris in some people. It's like, well, because I am suggesting it, then of course, I know this has been suggested 50 other ways, down the line, but now because it's my idea, it's going to work this time. Well, why? So I think there's trade-offs. I think you have to look at every individual on an individual basis, because going back to nature versus nurture is, just in a general sense, I just think life's a journey. I think you have your path, and just because you're not at the same pinnacle as someone else and say, well, I don't live in as nice a house, and I don't have a boat, and I don't have an RV, and I don't have this, or I don't live, I can't go do this. And well, there's certain things that I can't do in life. And I have to accept that because it's a trade-off. I have to trade off, scraping, scratching, living check to check, going to the grocery store back in my early years and saying, I can't buy the Del Monte brand of green beans. All I can buy is the Kroger brand because it's 20 cents cheaper per can. And realizing that, it's a mathematical equation. That's the number, and the numbers suck. I'm not going to argue that. Like, it sucks to live check to check and have that knot in your stomach and just be like, oh, am I going to make it? But I think the human behavior is bigger when it comes to finances. And there's so many, I'm optimistic because I think there's so many stories of success that we have. I mean, we live in an age where we have books these days, where we have human beings that have gone before us. They've passed, people like Peter Drucker in business, Jack Welch, Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, anybody that can tell you, hey, life's not always easy, but this is how you can do things. If you have integrity as a person and you have purpose and you have drive, then maybe you'll inch it up that. Nobody's life is completely successful. If you want to talk about success, and also you got to talk about the sacrifices and the setbacks that you've had in life. I mean, if we examined all that, I think everybody's life is going to have that. You're going to have setbacks and successes.
Oh, absolutely.
And
but
even
it comes
some
back
of these.
To what you just said. There's two things: reaction and responding. The difference between somebody that responds versus somebody that reacts. The person that responds has been trained and received the information to respond. The person that reacts has not received that, or does not have that, so he simply reacts.
Sure. And
reaction is like more of a natural thing. Like I said to you when we were talking on the other day, you're not a thief. But if it came down to your children eating and you're starving, other than stealing your wife from you stole her from me. Remember, she was my wife in the play.
She was your wife in the play. You weren't quick enough, Doc. You weren't quick enough, Doc.
Yeah, I blew it twice.
Hey, hold on.
Another wife.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he's polygamous. Sister wives. Pastor Allen got sister wives.
What play was this?
This is a play we were in together.
Hold on.
Anyway, responding and reacting.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with Word Today. I am Levi Donna Griffin, and this is...
Portia Griffin.
And she just drank a Bang energy drink to wake up because she was nodding on my shoulder. She's just kind of like this. She's threatening to squeeze the cut on my finger.
Oh, she cut your finger? Oh,
off camera,
God.
I did not cut his finger.
I don't want to know.
Violent. Yeah. Just see me in the corner shaking. Just
rocking,
So we left off with Eric about to... what were you about to tell us, Eric?
Oh, we were talking about nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture. And I asked a question about the intellectual, if the billionaires are the intellects, and if the lower income are below the poverty line, how do we, or the lower of intelligence, according to Pastor Allen. So how do we close that gap? Is it increasing everybody's wages? Is it education? Is it diversification in schools? Is it laptops? Is it iPads? Is it brain implants? Like, what do we do? What do we do to correct?
Well,
because
I don't.
Please tell us.
That's the thing. I don't think it's. There may. There's not a one size fits all solution.
Absolutely.
And so, it's the iPads. I almost said something there, but they're a tool, so if you're using your iPad wisely, great. If you're playing Candy Crush or games all day for 4 hours, I have to ask, well, if you can spend 4 hours at that, exactly. You could be spending 4 hours managing your finances, maybe starting a business, learning a new skill.
Absolutely.
I don't know the numbers, but I know we have a trade skills deficit in this country right now. I know there's, a lot of trades out there, industries that don't require 4-year degrees, that don't require a high level of intellect, that are high paying jobs. And there's people that have gone on to become millionaires in these industries. One of the best books I've ever read is The Millionaire Next Door, which was done by studies back in the 90s. Chris Hogan with the Ramsey Solutions family has a book out now called Everyday Millionaires, and they did a study of over thousands of millionaires in this country, and the number is very promising, because these are everyday people that have become successful, financially successful. Again, it goes back to our definition of success. How are we measuring success? We're very successful in this country measured to other countries in the world, which we all agree with.
Yes.
So, I have a little different take on things. I look at, nature versus nurture, and I can take my own family and say, well, my brother's journey has been separate than my journey, and we're close in age, and we had the same parents, the same schools, the same educations, the same churches, the same morals, the same values that were taught to us, but there's dramatically different results. And they're not, one's not negative and one's not positive. It's not like win or lose. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so I may be viewing the Grand Canyon while he's viewing a tropical beach in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like comparing apples and almonds. There's not a comparison. So I think this comparison, we measure success based on these things that we see people successful, and they are successful. But when you set a bar so high and say, well, that's my success, well, everything else looks dismal to that.
Well, you mentioned something.
Relatively.
And it kind of goes to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Well, you do need to take care of that hierarchy of needs first. You have your physical needs, your air, water, food, shelter,
right,
and then you got your social needs, the hierarchy and stuff. Yeah.
My point there is that the highest tier, you've created a level of stability where you're like enjoying fine arts and you're being creative.
If that's your highest level. The highest level is self-fulfillment, right? Mm-hmm. It's called self-fulfillment.
Yeah. So on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the bottom level, you're struggling to survive, right? You just need food. And then at the highest level, you've obtained food, you've obtained like relationships with people, you're in a level of
social,
stability. So now you're at a level of comforting and creativity, and you're no longer trying to feed yourself and pay your bills. You're now enjoying like what we consider finer things in life.
Depending on what you consider finer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we
have so many things in this world. There's a magazine for everything that you want to do today.
It's hunting, fishing, the traveling, to golfing.
It's crazy. Well, I think that goes back to the self-fulfillment. I think that's where people I think we have this lack of purpose or lack of meaning. And when people don't have that in their lives, then they lack everything else. Absolutely. I mean, you've got to take care of your air, water, food, shelter, the basic needs before you get to your basic wants. And once you achieve that, and this goes back to being broke but not poor, is that we're broke, we're living check to check.
Broke is a temporary situation.
But it's a temporary situation.
Poor is
for years,
consistent.
maybe. But then eventually you start moving up and into that different levels where you can take your foot off the gas and feel like, okay, I can breathe. Yeah.
One thing you said when we were at the barbecue that you didn't say tonight, but I thought was interesting. You said $8 an hour is not a career. I'm paraphrasing. You start there and you realize it's not enough money, and that motivates you to get a skill, or motivates you to do something.
It should.
To make more money.
Yeah. You
shouldn't go, man, I should be making more money flipping these fries. You go, hey, flipping fries doesn't make enough money. Let me go to changing tires. It should motivate you to do something else. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, I think that, it depends on, should we just throw more money at a problem? How does that fix the problem? I mean, that may not fix the problem, because the root of the problem may be different than what we think is the symptom of the problem. And so if you've got the root of the problem is X, and this is what we need to address is the person's purpose and meaning, is the person's purpose in life to flip burgers and fries for the next 20 years.
Well, again, but
if that is, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with street cleaners. There's nothing wrong with trash disposal people. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with janitors and stuff. I've mowed lawns. I cleaned up yucky stuff and trash. I still do it today. I was out doing tree trimming today, getting tar on me and everything else, for no pay, just for
by choice.
Yeah. And so I think that goes back to the minimum wage thing, is that if people have a choice, then they respond to the choices they have. When they're forced to do something, when you force a business owner to pay a certain wage or something, the market's going to take care of itself. Let's say there was no minimum wage. We're on a different planet for a second, and there's no minimum wage, right?
Okay.
Now there's a narrative that says, well, everybody's going to screw everybody. Okay, that's if you think that the human decency is, I'm out for myself, care about it. But honestly, if you went in for a job to flip burgers and fries or whatever we're talking about, pick up trash, be a lawn guy, and he says, well, I pay $1 an hour. Are you going to choose to do that job?
So you're saying free market capitalism would drive up wages? And what I mean by free market capitalism, it is, we're not a dictatorship. We all can choose to work where we want, and people can choose to sell what products we want. So you're saying the guy goes to business A, I give you $1 an hour to make widgets. He goes to business B, I give you $10 an hour to make gizmos. The guy's going to naturally go, I'm going to go make gizmos for 10 versus making widgets for 1 is what you're saying. Because
the business owner of B,
right on that real quick.
Business owner B has to, just briefly, business owner B to stay in business has to be competitive. So they have to pay the wages that the market, but based on supply and demand. When you go back to basics of economics, it comes back to supply and demand. What is the supply of employees and what's the demand for them? And so it's just like a product. But, if I hire a person to come and mow my lawn and do lawn care, if there's a supply of 500 lawn care professionals in San Antonio, then the price is relatively the same, maybe $30, $35, $40 a yard. I cannot go and choose to say, well, I'll only give you 10, because what is his or her response to me? Well, sorry.
Go do somebody else's lawn.
I'll do something else. Okay. So the supply, he's the worker, the employee, so to speak, and I'm the employer on a one-to-one basis, on a consumer to business basis. I don't dictate. He doesn't dictate. If he came to me and said, well, your lawn I'm charging $80 now next month. Well, the supply of lawnmowers is guys that can do landscaping is high enough that I can go to someone else and get a better thing. So he is in a way, the government isn't interjecting. The government isn't coming in and saying, we're going to force you to pay this or force this by what I call manipulating the market. The market is dictating what he can charge, And so this is why, these specialty items, when we lack, let's say coffee beans, for example, if for some reason there was a crazy coffee bean outage around the world in Colombia and over Arabia and all this stuff that we couldn't get coffee beans, what is going to happen to the price of coffee?
It goes up.
It goes up because the supply
and demand.
As long as the demand stays. Now, if the demand, everybody says tomorrow or next week says, hey, I'm done with coffee. For some reason, coffee is causing something, then everyone stops drinking coffee, which I doubt it. But, we're not getting emotional about it. We're just talking math here. Yeah. Is that the demand has gone down, but the supply is still there. What is Starbucks? What do all these coffee companies have to do? They have to lower the price. To
$1 Starbucks.
$1 Starbucks. And it's amoral. It's nobody is interjecting saying, nope, sorry, you're required to pay this or not pay this. And the same holds true for wages. if you look at industries where they can't get enough employees, you'll see that those wages in that industry have risen because of the competition, because the supply is low, but there's still the demand for those workers. So they've had to increase that. You know, it's any product you take. I mean, the thing where I think we get off track in the conversations with people is that it becomes emotional because it's human. Okay, we're humans. We're very emotional people. Mm-hmm. And it's not about deserving or not deserving. I think everyone deserves to have a nice life. Everyone deserves to have good things and
everybody deserves
peace
an
and happiness.
There's a whole segment of people that are going to watch this. They call college students, and the cost to go to college is so. I deal with this.
Wait, we only have time for one podcast.
I can tell you, we both can tell you about the cost of college.
So you're talking about.
Yeah. But even in college, if you think about it, the supply of students has gone up. The demand has gone up, but the number of colleges hasn't. No. It has a little bit with the online stuff.
These kids, that are trying to go to college, I'm having to deal with this. This is on personal basis. On $8 an hour, if you work, you make $8 an hour. You cannot afford to pay unless you got scholarships and stuff. You can't afford to go to college. The cost of college is ridiculous. The other side of the coin, the Bible says that the poor you'll have with you always. This is what Jesus said. The poor you have with you always. So you're always going to have somebody that's poor. You're always going to have somebody that's going to be rich. That doesn't mean that's going to happen. But what has happened in our country, the middle class has been diminishing over the years. Read the statistics. The middle class have been diminishing. And that's where we've got, instead of moving from here to middle class and whatever, and a few that are rich, whatever the case may be, the middle class are diminishing. The opportunity, I'm working on flipping hamburgers. I've been there and done that. Flipping hamburgers. I make $8 an hour. Say, well, I want to become an airplane pilot. Well, how much does it cost to do this? You'll never do it flipping burgers unless you get a scholarship or somebody, a rich uncle, somebody to pay your way to get you into that situation. So we have a whole segment of kids that want to go to college and they can't afford it.
Well, what about, and I'm curious to see what this whole conversation affects. It just hit me. And if you could find out real quick, I'm wondering what percentage of working Americans actually make minimum wage? Like how many people, are we talking about 50% of the working class, or are we only talking about 20% of the population? I'm wondering,
that's
out of
a good question.
all of the people that work in America, how many of them are making $30 an hour, $50 an hour? How many? I'm curious. How many
are actually at that?
Who are actually at the minimum wage level? Like, how many people are we literally?
Any
what percentage of people
kid that graduates from high school only are going to make pretty much minimum wage, pretty much.
But not for their whole life.
Not for their whole life.
Yeah,
that's against their production levels.
Here to there is they don't have the opportunity to fund. Like I say, one of the fundamental issues in this country right now is the cost of higher education. So you got
like I said, that's a whole new
stumbling
podcast.
block. Yeah, but that's part of the equation of why are you flipping burgers? Because I can't go. This is the only thing I can do.
Well, we're picking on the burger makers. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of options, and there are students that are going through.
There's a lot of McDonald's and a lot of KFCs and a lot of all these places.
There's a lot of
employ these individuals.
Of course.
Wow.
And if you go in there, you can't get to a level to step to the next. The whole thing is. It's like having steps.
But they do.
But wait a minute. It's like having steps. You got step here, step there, step. So if you take one step out of that process where you can't step up to it, everything above the other steps are eliminated. And what I'm saying is opportunity has to present itself. The cost of education is ridiculous. It's too high. And ones that have to borrow money, then they go into severe debt. This is a big debate in this country right now. I'm not the only one saying this. This is many, many, many people. There are people that are running on the presidential or for president, that millions of people are saying this is an issue. Education and opportunity, the cost of college. You said something about supply and demand. Drugs, the cost where people have to make an actual choice, between getting my stuff for me to live versus getting food. Mm-hmm. That ought not be that way. Remember the guy that took the one pill and he said all of a sudden he raised the price up by 1,000%. And everybody's going, wait a minute. Why you didn't have an initial increase in cost. You just did it because of greed. Greed is a real thing.
No one's arguing that.
But we're not putting that into the equation. Where are the greedy people that are sick with greed and have no compassion because they turn their head and look the other way? They don't want to look at the kids that are trying to better themselves but can't afford it.
I think that's why we're having the conversation about, going in the communities and talking to the people in the communities and helping the people that want to get help, because you're never going to
opportunity vote to get the right people in office that will make it a fair market. I'm not saying.
Well, who determines it's fair?
All you got to do is look and see what fair is.
What is fair?
Well, what is fair is for different people in different situations going to be different.
Less than 4%.
But what is fair? That's.
Sorry. We're talking about less than 4%.
Yeah.
So less than 4% are hourly. Are making minimum wage.
So I got a question. Okay, I got a question for the conversation.
If less than 4%, then it's not going to break us to pay them a fair wage. If it's less than 4%, it's whatever the case may be for them to earn a minimum wage. It's not going to break us if it's only 4%. So now we're talking.
How do you know it's not going to? How do you know it's not going to break the small business owner?
So now you keep saying the small business owner. That's not necessarily where they're paying the minimum wage. You got the McDonald's. You got these are corporations that are paying minimum wage.
Well, corporations and small businesses are some. But why?
And the majority of employment does go to small business.
How do you know that forcing a business to pay a higher wage isn't going to hurt them?
Well, I mean, everything has to be fair.
How is that not fair? For the business owner,
be fair, right?
But what is? That's what I mean. Fair is a
relative
subjective term. It depends on
who's calling what is fair.
Determined exactly.
The way we find that out is
so voting. It's not objective.
Well, it's through voting and making sure that everybody has the opportunity to vote, and then we can talk about fair. Because where the rules are made and the regulations are made and what have you are not in certain neighborhoods. It's certain individuals. Mm-hmm. And so much has been done to make sure they cannot vote. This has been going on. I mean, it's been in my lifetime.
So what do you think about the Seattle?
The right to vote was...
What about the Seattle situation we talked about?
60-something, 65. 1965. I mean, that's in my lifetime. I'm like, I was a teenager.
What do you think about the Seattle situation with raising the wage and then how
I cannot address one single situation, and the only thing I can see.
No, that's a whole community.
I'm not talking about one community. I'm talking about the overall that is college. The cost of college is too high. There needs to be a decent wage paid to these people that do jobs that we don't want to do.
So your solution is raising the wage so that people can pay what it costs for college.
Okay. No, I didn't say all that.
I was asking. That's a question.
The cost of college. Okay. I'm going to quote someone. I can't take credit for this. It was okay for first grade, right? 5th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade. When you get to 13th grade, now you got to pay all this money. And so you're talking about they're going to school to go to the 13th grade, and it's going to cost, somebody's got to come up with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 if they don't have a scholarship. And the sad thing about it is the kids that do have athletic scholarships, in every major university, University of Texas, I don't remember the totals, but in major universities, these kids go out and crunch and do all this stuff. Only a small percentage are going to go to the pros. And millions of dollars are made by these universities. So they're really not, they get a scholarship, they're making money off these kids. They are making money off these programs.
But that's not the argument. We're not talking about that.
Without that ability, if I have an average person who doesn't doesn't have the same skill set as this other person, and he wants to go to college. He comes from a poor home. He cannot afford to go to college. So he's got to go out and get some kind of job. The kind of job they're going to get, just come out of high school, is going to be a minimum wage job. And at the minimum wage job, they are in poverty, dude.
So are you saying that it's the employer's job to make sure they pay enough for the kid to go to college?
It's everybody. This country, it's us, it's people. Other countries are able to do it. We're the richest country in the world, the greatest country in the world. We should be able to do it where it's affordable for them to go to college. Maybe not free, but affordable.
Why is that the goal?
Why is the goal? Because of the things we're talking about. Because we have diminishing middle class, and it's only fair to give everybody in this country. If this is the home of the land of the free and the brave, everybody deserves an opportunity to better themselves. But if they can't afford it, they're not going to be able to do it.
So let me drop some statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Okay.
We're trying to stay neutral. We do want to fact check, though. If you do come from a home where they're making minimum wage, you can go to college. I know because I did it with FAFSA. Yeah, you get loans, but the whole idea is you get out of college and you make more money because you get a better job. So you don't have to have the fat cat uncle. FAFSA will help you, and of course other grants and
scholarships grants
will
help you go to college.
And I guess the question is
the Bureau
is that
there are some kids that don't what colleges can you go to? How much does that pay? I'm telling you, it's still a struggle. But it's still a struggle.
So I don't know any college that I know. Every major college, every state college, community college, they're going to take FAFSA. But I wanted to review these from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. In 2017, 80.4 million workers aged 16 and older in the United States were paid at hourly rates, representing 58.3% of all wage and salary workers. Among those paid by the hour, 542,000 workers earned exactly the prevailing federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour. About 1.3 million had wages below the federal minimum wage. Together, these 1.8 million workers with wages at or below the federal minimum made up 2.3% of all hourly paid workers. So under the 4% we were talking earlier. The percentage of hourly paid workers earning the prevailing federal minimum wage or less declined from 2.7 in 2016 to 2.3% in 2017. This remains well below the percentage of 13.4 recorded in 1979 when data were first collected on a regular basis. So it seems that minimum wage, people paying minimum wage, it's going down. So the majority of the people, even look like entry-level jobs, are making more than
what they're required to pay.
They're required to pay. So I think that just changes the paradigm of how many people we're talking about actually making minimum wage, or in this case, it includes people making less than minimum wage. So I don't know how you record someone making less than minimum wage. Apparently, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics figured out a way. Yeah. But I know, it's just a personal story. When I met my wife, she was making $1.25 babysitting, and it was because it was her friend. She was trying to help out, but she was making like $1.25 babysitting, helping out a friend. But that wasn't her goal to say babysitting. Her goal was to eventually meet me and get married.
Oh my goodness!
Well, I can say I used
wait. Let her answer.
Answering that. No, but I know from my personal situation, I did a year of college, but some financial situations happened to where they allowed me to go to the school for a whole year with my funding still pending. And because my parents did not have their taxes in order, they were like, oh, let your parents work on their taxes and you can still go to school. Basically being greedy, because they should have just told me we can't accept you because your parents' taxes aren't together, because I was apparently chosen for verification. And the result was the loans that I would have gotten and the FAFSA that I would have gotten got taken all back. So, and then FAFSA, it didn't even show up, period. Mm-hmm. So I ended up on that whole year.
When you say didn't take it back, you mean you were never approved for it?
But yeah, the
Yeah, because
pending
once you're
never.
approved, the money's already allocated.
The statements and all that was pending the whole year. So it's my first time. I didn't know. We didn't do all of our homework and research. We can say that. I was doing my first time. They're like, okay, come in. They let me borrow money from the school and all that to go to the Starbucks and all
And
that.
what school did?
You want
No,
to
I don't. I they let him do it. She didn't want. I would say because but I will say this was not a state school. This was not a.
It was a private.
It's a private school.
It wasn't even really. Yeah. It was a private school that wasn't dealing with the best practices. Because normally you can't start school without an approved FAFSA. No school lets you start. But this school apparently bent the rules.
Result, I ended up I owed them the whole year, which was a lot of money. It was like $26,000. But of course, not being able to come back to that school, and then because I wasn't able to get my transcript because we did not have that money, I basically could not go back to school at that time. Mm-hmm. So I did get a job at Sonic, and I was a cook, and I think I was making about $9. I think I got up to like $9.15 an hour. Compared to when I came here, I worked at a hair store, and they start off at minimum wage, it's like $7.25, and they chose how much they went up. I think it was 50 cents every 6 months that you're there. So I had worked about 2 years there, and I left with probably about $8 to $8.50. And those are all young girls that are. Well, you do choose to work there because I don't have to work there, but because of my situation, I was working there, and it was a bunch of young girls just working there.
So basically, FAFSA ties in you with your parents. So if your parents' business is not in order, a lot of homes, the parents are not in order. Well, then you're basically the child is penalized because my parents won't do it. I've had many kids being a pastor that say, "Well, I can't get my parents just won't." They're not gonna do what they need to do. So I'm penalized because my parents doesn't take care of business, or because my parents make too much money. But it ain't my money. I'm penalized, so they're expecting the parents to ante up $26,000 for a year.
So is FAFSA a government?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you are penalized until I think you're age 20. You're considered an adult, and you don't need your parents' tax return. So
it would delay 18,
you
19, 3 years.
Yeah, I think 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it shouldn't be.
So the government who has this program sounds like it's a mess. You want the government to get involved with higher education also?
No, the funding of
and the program is not a mess. It's a great program.
It's a great program.
I'm not familiar with it.
Schools shouldn't have allowed her to start without making sure. So it was not on FAFSA. It was on the school.
Yeah, but there's some tweaking that needs to be done because
I got the student loans from the school, and if I'm sure FAFSA would have got involved, I probably only would have owed $3,000 for that year if all of it went through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thing with the college is that the thing I do know, I don't have kids, and so I haven't had to deal with this probably in the next few years with some nieces and nephews. But the thing that I do know about the colleges is that the government has set up loans, guaranteed loans that cannot be defaulted on. And the colleges have taken advantage of that because they know that is guaranteed money for them. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons, in addition to the supply and demand issue, but in one of the reasons why they've jacked up those prices so much. And that's all I have to say on that. That's about my level of expertise on the college system. I know it's high cost and stuff. I've got a break here in a minute with the time, but I was. I mean, we can. That, like I said, we can. The college thing could be a 5-part series podcast, and so. But I had a question. This is a financial question. The other day we were in a restaurant, and at the end of the restaurant, and I've seen this before, they have on the bottom of the receipt. I don't know if you guys have seen this or anything, but they have on the bottom of the receipt, they have a suggested tip. And my first response is, have we really lost the capability to do math in this country that we can't figure out tips? anymore. And so then I started looking at it, and I wanted to know what the consensus is of maybe the viewers and of the people here today is the tip suggested amount was not on the food, the subtotal. It was on the amount after they had taxed you, which I thought was a little odd because they had nothing to do with the tax.
Exactly.
And so I wanted to pick your brain on your thoughts.
If you say a suggested tip, that's a suggestion. When I tip, let me
rephrase that. Do you think the suggestion should have been on the subtotal or
doesn't
on?
matter what they suggest. They can suggest $1 million. What? That's fine. So
and
you erase that all out. I erase that all out of my mind, and I base it on the service. If I get good service, I'm a generous tipper because my wife taught me how to tip. I used to not be.
Yeah.
But I'm a generous tipper.
Okay, so my question: do you tip on the subtotal?
Well, I tip. I don't even look at that.
Do you start? Or you just have
what I think is appropriate for how much money.
How many people? Spend. How long? Okay.
Yeah, and what kind of service I got from the server.
Yeah,
we're pretty generous tippers.
Yeah, if they're good, if I get good service.
So we're normally whatever their suggestion, we're normally
I want to
pretty much over
yeah.
that, so it doesn't even.
Yeah, and I use the little thing. I like the little kiosk.
Well, we're generous tipper. My thing was I
didn't pay no attention to that. I didn't even see it.
Yeah. Okay, that answers my question.
It's even after the tax, we're still normally over it.
Yeah,
we're pretty generous. If we're pretty But we'll be right back. We'll be here until midnight. Thoughts from Eric and Pastor Allen, and we want tons of comments on this. We'll try to get them back to answer your comments, so make sure you leave plenty of comments.
There you go.
When we get back.
Okay, we're back, and now we're going to do final remarks. That's all I got.
You want to make a final remark?
No.
You want a final remark? You want to make a final remark about what was the name of the college again?
I'm not. I never said it. Don't say that.
If y'all know, where's Kendall? Kendall, put in the comments the college.
No.
Because I can't say it if she's not going to say it. But
technically, if you go on my page, you'll see it. But
yeah, the college that did not so great things. But since we started with you, Eric, we'll start with you. Pastor Allen, final remarks.
Final remarks. I would say that, and I would encourage everyone very short here. I would encourage those who are out there to get involved, do your own research, and vote. Vote. It's important to find individuals that have common goals that you have. Don't get discouraged. Go out and vote. That's what I would say.
Okay, the First Lady has some remarks.
Well, I would just like to say, any opportunity, and this is more for younger people or anybody, period, but especially the young people, any opportunity you are given for higher education and higher opportunities, because there are people out there trying to fight for you to get opportunities for those that may not have it as easy as others do. So I would tell you to take it and run with it. I can say I know I have personal family members that have been given opportunities and did not take it. And it made me mad because me as a person wanting opportunities may not have gotten those opportunities. So I'm still pushing, but they're not. But the opportunity was given to them. So I just say take the opportunity, get as much education as you can. And sometimes nowadays, especially I tell the youth at my church, technology gives you access to everything. Libraries are free for you to go read. There are access to programs, if you do have access to internet, of people that may give free reading if you don't know how to read or if you don't know how to do stuff. There's a lot of branches to different areas for you to get help. So sometimes we can't just make excuses. We just got to do it, and those that may not have opportunity, we're working on it. Okay.
Working
That's all I can say.
Eric? Fly us out of here.
Well, let's go. First of all, thanks for having me. This has been a great experience.
Oh yeah,
it's been awesome. Definitely. I love our conversations. If I can offer any encouragement to anybody out there, I just learn from the past and remember the past and learn from it. Focus on the present and stay disciplined. Plan for the future and take action and prepare. If you're not taking action, then find something that motivates you. We live in an age of technology. You've got podcasts, you've got YouTube videos, you've got self-improvement books, everything out there. You've got people out there that are willing to help on a volunteer basis. I do help with people's personal finances on a volunteer basis. If anybody needs assistance, please shoot me an email at themoneymentor@yahoo.com. I'll go over your personal finances with you anytime, free of charge. I'll look at them. We can look at numbers, look at things that you can do to improve your financial situation if that is something that you need. Thanks for having me, guys.
No, great. And I guess my final remarks to this, and normally I don't make final remarks, but this was such a great conversation. I just want to say, with my background, I was lucky enough to have my father in my life, and he was big on don't complain about anything you're not willing to change.
Hey, got my head.
I live in there. And so he didn't take a lot of excuses. We were dirt poor. I mean, literally, the dirt had more money than us. So he was like, the world didn't going to give you nothing.
Right.
Go out there and get it. So he didn't give us the ability to use our situation as an excuse.
Right.
And I remember my first marketing job, and they said, close the back door. A guy named Brian Ray, he changed my life forever. B&W Marketing. Brian, if you ever watched this, thank you so much. He was a guy, he was young. He was young like I was. I was maybe 20, maybe 25. And he ran his own business, his own marketing firm. And he said, close the back door. Most people come into it and it's hard, it's sales. They'll think if I fail at this, I can go work, at Sears, I can go back to school, I can do whatever. He says, as long as there's a back door in your mind, you'll never succeed at this. Right. As long as, I can, blame the system for my problems, or I can always go back and live with mom and dad, or I can do whatever. As long as that back door is there, I think you'll never succeed at anything. You have to close the back door and say, come hell or high water, I will make it. I'm going to push myself. And if there's no opportunity there, I will make opportunity. I know I've done it. I bought candy from the grocery store next door, and when I've sold it, I've ordered stuff online. I bought stuff online for like 20, 30, 40 bucks when I sold it, and then use that money to buy more. If you close the back door and just have a mindset, I'm going to succeed regardless, you will, because that's the only option you've given yourself. So just get out there and like Nike said, just do it. We've all heard the success stories of the person that came from nothing and succeeded. If you're at the person where you're at the place where you have nothing, then go watch some of those videos and get motivated, because you can. So, like, share.
Like, share.
She was
love. I was getting hyped. Hyping you up. Comment. Please send comments and questions. If you want to see it again, we probably will do part 2.
I would love it if you guys come out and just blow it up, share it, leave comments. We'll beg these guys. We'll give them some brisket or something to get them back.
That'll work.
For part 2. Make sure you email for financial advice. That's a great service. Leave comments, and you can always hit us up in the DMs. Holla at me in the DMs.
Yeah. So we'll be back next time with another pastor back on our words from our leaders. What else do we say?
So you normally say love, share, subscribe.
Yeah, I said love them. Send questions. If you're a pastor,
yes, please
get with us if you would love to be on here.
We'd love to have you on here.
Your senior pastor will be perfect on here. Please get in touch with us. We're always looking for pastors. We're always looking for people to be on. If you have some interest and may want to come on segments like this, let us know. We're always welcoming people. Check out our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, most of our viewers, probably 99% of our viewers are on Facebook. For the 3 of y'all that's on YouTube, hey man, we appreciate it.
It's like 5.
Like 5 views on YouTube. And then you'll see like 26,000 Facebook, 5 views.
Yes. We have, if you would love to subscribe to The Word Today Text messaging is 332 stronger to 33222. You get daily scriptures that are awesome. And
check out the podcast. If you're on iPhone, you have Apple, then it's easy to go to the podcast app and look up Levi Griffin's Audio Podcast. If you're on Android, just look up Levi Griffin's Audio Podcast on your Stitcher app or wherever you get your podcast.
Yes, and Word Today blog is coming soon. So be looking out for that. Well, coming back soon.
Yes.
And
it's dope. I love it.
And
we're gonna have a ghostwriter.
If it's a ghostwriter. And also be looking.
She has a YouTube channel. She's gonna teach you how to get fried, dyed, and laid to the side.
No. But be looking for that.
Yes, she is.
In your spirit. Come on now.
All right. Anything else? Thank you guys for coming out and hanging out with us.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Really enjoyed having you, Eric, and having you back. Pastor Allen, make sure you check out his church. He has a lot of amazing things going on. Make sure you email Eric for financial advice and leave your comment. You want to give a number? We get 50 comments. We get 30 comments. We get 10 comments. We'll come back. We'll have these guys back. 20 comments. We get 20 really good comments. We're going to bring them back. 20 is a good round number, right?
Yeah.
20 comments. All right, guys. See you next time.
Ciao.
Let's take a nap. Let's take a nap.
If you go to sleep on this, yeah, that's actually tastes pretty good.
We're talking about, you've heard of Bangs? Bangs?
The drink?
Yeah.
I've never had it, but I've heard of it. I've seen it.
Good stuff. We drink.
Is it an energy drink?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's all natural.
Okay.
So we drank one, and we were both up to, I think, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
We were
up to 5. We cleaned everything.
I cleaned the entire house. He put up an organizer.
More bang. We need more bang.
Organized all of them.
That scares me, man.
Like, this house was ready, and we were just like, okay, and we had to get back up at like 6.
Oh.
6:30.
Isn't there a crash after,
Well, we didn't crash. We went to sleep because it was 5 a.m.
We went to sleep for like 2 hours, got back up, and I had to go to work with him, and I think that's when you had to shoot the videos and stuff.
Yeah, I was working. Now, she did nap in the car.
For 30 minutes, I about fell out. Remember, it was hot, and I forgot to let the window down.
She went to sleep in the car and it was hot.
Oh, no.
The windows
Jesus
up.
woke me up.
Mm-hmm. And luckily, he woke you up on this side of life.
Excuse me.
Have your wife. She baked. She came out roasted.
Mom was gone.
I put just drizzled some butter on it.
We're getting a little too personal there, haven't
You're gonna have a new bumper stick. Don't leave your kids in the car. Don't leave your family in the car.
Don't leave your wife in the car.
Don't leave your wife in the car with the windows rolled up.
Alright. You're rock. Alright. Yeah, Eric was talking.
Alright.
You ready? You gonna wake up?
Okay,
All right.
start.
No patty cakes in here.
Do you have the?
Oh yeah, you actually do. The clapper? Where's the clapper?
It's in the drawer.
You actually do have a clapper.
Take number.
All right, go ahead. Bring us back. Any day.
We're back. Stop. Okay, we're back, and now we're going to do final